Yes, it's good. All good.
Okay. So hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to present our research. My name is Jędrzej. As it had been mentioned, I work at Appsilon, and today I'll be telling you a story about how we've helped preserve wildlife with computer vision. So the plan for the talk consists of three parts. In the first one, I'll briefly explain what Appsilon does and how the AI for Good initiative falls under our umbrella. And then I'll focus on a specific case in which we've used our skills to for the greater good. So we decided that we want to contribute with our resources, with our time, to some initiatives that we find important, and therefore this will be one of them. The second part of the talk will be mostly focusing on computer vision because it was a large part of this effort, and then I'll also discuss the impact of this project. So the project actually has a logo. So this is the Mbaza logo in the middle. I should say that that this work has been supported by, or we did it under the umbrella of AI for Good initiative at Appsilon, but we have collaborated with experts, wildlife conservation experts from University of Stirling, and also with experts from the National Parks Agency in Gabon. So, as I mentioned, let me say that Appsilon is a data science consultancy company, you can say, and we specialize in two areas. One is building interactive dashboards presenting data that is typically possessed by an organization or other party, and then basically what we build is interfaces for this data or for some models that are built upon that data, so that this data can be transformed into actionable insights. And our niche, I would say, is especially dashboards built in the R-Shiny technology. So we are, I think, most well known for open source packages that we've built for R-Shiny. But we're also working in other technologies, and you'll see an example of that today. And the second part of our expertise is actually in machine learning and in computer vision in particular. And I happen to be mostly involved in those kinds of efforts. So, as I have said, as part of our AI for Good initiative, we decided to devote, or our AI for Good initiative is an initiative where we decided to devote the time we have and our skills to contribute to good causes. And one of such cases involved helping the bioconservation efforts in Central Africa. So let me take you on a journey to Central Africa. Gabon is one of the countries located there. And as you can already see from the satellite image, large parts of it, actually, if I remember correctly, over 80% of the area of Gabon is taken by rainforests. And many of those, or large areas of those rainforests are in fact national parks. And those ecosystems are especially valuable to biodiversity of the basically at large on the Earth, because those ecosystems are home to many large mammals. In particular, if I remember correctly, more than a half of the world's population of forest elephants lives in Gabon. But also large apes like gorillas, chimpanzees, and mandrills, also large wild cats like leopards and golden cats live in Gabon. So you can understand that those ecosystems are exceptionally valuable to the world. And you may think that that with the climate crisis happening all over the world, such ecosystems, which are relatively large and then relatively far from at least our day-to-day life for the majority of us in this webinar, I can imagine, that they are somehow separated from the effects of the crisis, right? They are in rainforest. They don't experience as much problems, or they don't experience them so harshly. And it turns out not to be the case. So it's clear by now that those populations of those large African mammals are especially subject to mounting pressures coming from the climate crisis. But in particular, in order to understand this pressure and understand the change those ecosystems undergo, we actually need to monitor them. And that here the problem starts, because these are vast areas of rainforests that we need to somehow investigate. We need to monitor, and then this is a real challenge for the people in charge of protecting those ecosystems. Also, apart from the fact that there are so many forests in Gabon, there are obviously people living there. Its population is not that large, but still, so the density of the population is not that large, but still there are people living there, and they obviously need to have infrastructure built, for example. So they need to have roads, they need to build factories, and therefore it's crucial to be able to monitor precisely the effects of certain investments or decisions of the authorities on those ecosystems, in order to for example, minimize the impact and to protect the parts which need that. So for both of those reasons, it is crucial to monitor, as I said, what is going on in those ecosystems. And one of the ways of doing that, and recently becoming more and more popular way of doing that, is by the use of camera traps. So on this slide on the left, you see 3 times an example of an image of a camera trap. So it's a small device that is typically installed, in the case of forests, on a tree or some pole, typically from like 30 centimeters to a meter above the surface of the ground. And those devices consist basically of a camera and a sensor. Typically, this is a heat sensor or a motion sensor, and they're set up in such a way that if an animal passes in front of them, they take a picture of this animal. Now, bioconservationists place such camera traps in large amounts, or in large numbers, I should have said, on vast regions of those rainforests, and they start collecting images. You can imagine that quickly those images form enormous databases, which someone has to get the insights from. So the current workflow is that those images are collected in batches. So basically, people who've placed those, or the park rangers typically, go to those camera traps. They collect from each individual camera trap the photos on a memory card. I think typically these are SD cards. And then they collect from a few of the camera traps located in an area. Roughly, that forms a data set of typically, let's say, 30,000 images. And then they need to process that. So what happens next is that they spend roughly 4 to 5 weeks going through those images and manually separating them into images of individual species. You can see examples of that on the right. And only after that, the ecological modeling can start. So they can answer questions like, how is the population of, say, golden cats or maybe forest elephants evolve over time? So how do they move around certain areas? What is their day-to-day activity, and all sorts of other ecological metrics? But in order to derive them, you need to first have the data classified. So in a nutshell, what we did was we've introduced a shortcut for them, which allowed them to get to the stage where they can start doing the ecological modeling in a day from collecting the data, rather than in a month. And because of that, they save large amounts of time, which now they can spend on doing more, on getting more insights from the data and helping advise the local authorities, for example, on where to build a road or what was the effect of the road that was built in a certain area on those ecosystems. Now, of course, in order, in the remainder of the talk, I will tell you a bit more about how we actually, so what did we precisely do to shorten that that time and how those things work. So the first part consisted of actually collecting a training data set and building a model. So we got a data set of camera trap images, as I said. The data set we received for this project consisted of roughly 1.5 million images, and they spanned multiple national parks. They came from multiple camera types, and they were of very varying quality. And you will be able to witness that in a moment. I should also say that we were focusing on 27 animal species, mostly rather large mammal species and birds. But of course, there are many more living in that area. However, we've decided with the wildlife conservationists that this will be the focus because these act as good proxies for the well-being of the ecosystems. Now, these are examples of the actual data sets. These are real images from that data set. And I'm showing them to you here because I like them, but also to encourage you to actually engage in projects like this. Because one of the benefits of working with real-life data from ecological studies is that you get to witness images like that. And then yeah, and I have a collection of images that I every now and then go back to just because they're so awesome. They're awesome not only because they look awesome, but for example, the image in the top left is an image of an African golden cat, which is the least studied large African mammal, African wildcat. So it's pretty awesome that I was actually able to look at any specimen at all. But of course, when you work with real data, it's not only images like this that you see, but the majority looks like this. So I'm showing you this collection to indicate a few problems in the data that we had to overcome to actually do any modeling. So first of all, as I said, those images come from camera traps, so they are automatically triggered. And you see what happens with that in the top left corner, where basically the camera was triggered probably by the leaves or some branch of a tree that just happened to be blown by the wind, probably in front of the camera. The image on the top right corner is basically an image taken at night. So obviously those cameras are left to operate both at during daytime and nighttime. There are nocturnal animals, and they quite often struggle with pictures taken at night. In the bottom left corner, you see a problem that is quite often the case in camera traps in forests, and it's typical for forest data, namely that it's very hard to distinguish the foreground from the background because everything is foreground. So there's just a lot of edges, of contours, of color. Oh well, no colors in this case, but you know there is a lot happening in this image, and you still need to identify the interesting part of it. There are also all sorts of artifacts related to the fact that that those cameras are actually hanging in the forest for extended periods of time, and therefore the quality of the images deteriorates with time because of various let's say okay, I wanted to make an intro to a joke, so let me go directly to that. So the thing is that in all those images, in all those 4 images, there actually is an animal. And in the bottom right corner, this is a leopard. And I was steering to the fact that this camera was quite probably licked by the leopard. So they are quite often interested in those cameras. They sniff on them. So we have a lot of images of zoomed in faces of, or let's say faces of leopards. And actually, whoops, sorry for scrolling. And actually, you can see a piece of an ear somewhere in the middle of this camera. And this image is correctly identified by the model we've built as depicting a leopard. The image on the bottom left corner, contains a dowker. So this is a small deer that lives in the African forests, and you can see one at the right of the image. But imagine that this right part didn't fit in the image. There is actually another one in it. And it's really hard to spot, but once you know what you're looking for, you will see it right in the middle. It's turned with its back towards us. So this is its tail, and there are two rather long legs of the dowker here. There supposedly is also a mandrill in the top left corner, and my only guess is that we see a piece of its back in the towards the right of the image, but that's like the best guess. I don't see the mandrill in this image. And then the dark image is an example of something we called night vision with computer vision. So basically our model, it happened quite often that the labelers, the expert, labeled images like this as empty, but then our models kept telling us that there are animals in them. And in fact, when you process this image with image processing software, you can basically make it brighter. And then you will see that indeed the dowker is quite clearly there. But the magic is that our model sees this dowker clearly, and it's very sure that it sees the dowker there, even when it's looking at an image like that. So with that said, you can now have an idea of, on one hand, the challenge in front of our models. So we needed to deal with all sorts of problems like that. But also you come to appreciate the effort of the wildlife conservationists. So I've just told you that they spend 4 to 5 weeks each time looking at images mostly like this, trying to identify animals as quickly as possible, because only then they can actually proceed to the ecological modeling. But we still build a model that we've actually used the FastAI wrapper above of PyTorch, and we've trained our models on Google Cloud. I'm mentioning this also because Google was kind enough to provide to us cloud resources for this project, so that we could train our models on powerful GPUs offered by the cloud. And here is just another example of how our model works. And I've decided to put it here to make it a challenge. So our model is very certain that there is an Nkulengu rail bird in this image on the right. And on the left, I'm presenting how the bird looks like. So you would think that it's probably rather easy to identify the bird. So can you actually see the bird in the image on the right? Well, I could not. But because I knew that the model is better than I initially expected, I actually spent some time looking for this bird, and I did find it. So if you look very closely in the area highlighted with the blue color, you will see that it's turned with the beak towards the left, and then its body, it's hidden behind some branches and some leaves. And actually at the very bottom of this shape, you see that there is part of this characteristic red leg visible. So I was actually wondering how the model, how was it possible that the model actually picks this up? And I've done some analysis on this image, and it turns out that it most probably is focusing mostly on the beak, which is the most visible part of this bird. There's also kind of the shape of the head and the beak. Right. Overall, to summarize the performance of the model, we've tested it on completely out-of-sample data, and by completely I mean both temporally independent and spatially independent. So we've basically taken another batch of images coming from different national parks, and then we've tested the performance of the model. You see a confusion matrix on the right, which is looking good in the sense that it's roughly diagonal. Of course, there are some terms which are off the diagonal, and these are the mistakes that our model makes. I should also say that those numbers are normalized per row. So these are basically accuracies or balanced accuracies, you sometimes call them. And on the left, you also see something that is some summary. So you see that the top 1 accuracy of our model was roughly 80%, with top 5 accuracy of 95%. However, basically focusing on only on images which our model had enough confidence in predicting, we see that we can basically discard some part of the test data to get higher accuracies on the right. So on the images that we retain. This might seem weird when you're thinking of dropping data, but this actually happens to be quite useful for ecological analysis, because it's not that crucial that you take into account all the images. It's more important that you identify the images correctly. So you can actually basically just discard some part of it as long as your insights are correct. So you can say, well, okay, we've built a nice model. We've shown that it generalizes to unseen data and independent data. We've preserved wildlife, right? Well, not so fast. You see, the thing is that regardless of how good a model you build, it actually won't make any difference unless someone starts using it. So basically, at this stage in the story I'm telling, we are at this point. We just have a PyTorch model, and which some people asked us to build for them, but now we need to make it usable for them. And here comes the hardest part, or another obstacle we need to go over. And the thing is that most of the people, so the bioconservationists working in Gabon and the park rangers, they basically only have at their disposal rather dated Windows machines, and they have almost no internet connection. So of course there is internet in Gabon. What I'm saying is that when they do their work, when they are collecting this data and they're processing it, the connection they are having is so bad that it's impossible to do the standard approach. Just deploy the model somewhere in the cloud, upload the images, receive the results. That's not possible for them. So what we needed to do is build something local for them. And we did. We've built an app that has an installer on Windows machines, and it can be used just with the rather dated CPU units of those machines. And we've built we've built an app which was basically an interface to the model, in which you can upload the data, you can classify it using the model in the back, and then you can draw some first insights from this data. I'm mentioning here that we've built this app in Electron with Node.js and React in the back. So here is a glimpse into this app. We see here that some images were already uploaded and they were classified. We see the temporal dependence of or presence of the data of the different species in the data. We also saw for a moment the spatial, so geographical locations of those images, which could be investigated in the panel on the right, which you'll see now. And then you could also zoom in to inspect individual images taken at those locations at a certain time to see what actually has been found there by the cameras. Of course, you can then export this data to run all sorts of sophisticated ecological modeling that you wish for or that you need to run. So what I have presented to you is the app. So this app is open source. It's available in our GitHub in the Wildlife Explorer repository. If you feel like it, please contribute. It's currently being, or it was supposed to be already deployed in Gabon. I was actually hoping to pay a visit there this year, but well, for obvious reasons, this has to be postponed. However, the model is being tested It's being used by people working there and abroad, focusing on the Gabon national parks. It has also been recently scaled to 4 or 5, if I believe, if I remember correctly, other African countries. We have also used the results of the model in a study of the next step. So I've mentioned that with these models, once you have the data classified, you can put them into ecological models. And we have co-authored a paper which you can find on the archive if you follow that bit.ly link, in which we show that the ecological models, which are based on the labels provided by the model, are in many cases indistinguishable statistically from the models following directly from the human labelers. So basically, that means that we can speed up the process of obtaining those insights by a large factor. And lastly, I want to say that this model actually is being used in an ongoing study of the Yaws disease, which happens to be a skin disease troubling the gorilla population in Gabon. And you see an example of a sick animal in the bottom right corner of the slide. And there are actually more studies that are ongoing, but that are on a stage too early to be mentioned here. So the models are being used, and we're very happy and proud of that. So with that said, I want to leave you with a message. Within the data science community, and in particular computer vision or machine learning community, we have a lot of skills that are very valuable to the outer world, and in particular to wildlife conservation and also other ecological efforts. So you have the skills that are very needed. Please use them the best you can. And you can reach us on one of the emails that I'm posting here, so please feel free to contact.